All right, Gianfranco is let's get into the film When Big People Lie. I really love this film. It was amazing to me. I think the thing that stood out the most, I kind of mentioned when I made a post on my on our account, is that it kind of feels like when you're watching this film, like you're visualizing someone's memories, like you're inside this boy's like mind and you see his memories, the way that when I think about something it feels like kind of this blur of flashing images, and that's kind of how it's captured in the film, and it's so beautifully done and effective emotionally, and it's super cinematic. Also the performances were amazing, the music, the editing, the story itself I feel like is very, I've never seen a story like that, exactly that specific premise and the way it's done, and just it was super impressive. And I, just want to get your thoughts on like the process and the background of this. But yeah, first, can you just tell me a little bit about your film background and how you got into filmmaking?
Yeah, man, I kind of grew up like a big cinephile. Um, Also, just FYI, I live with my family, and so we are like cooking and everything. It's a very loud space right now. I just want to prep everybody. It's very Latino up in here. But anyway, what I started with like watching movies back home. Like my mom would work crazy hours, like I want to say, 70, 80 hours a week at like a furniture store. And the only
Wow.
time that we ever had, like I was always with my grandparents, typical Latino, story. I mean, really people in general. Like if you have a single parent and that parent's working all the time, you're often in the care of somebody else, aunts, uncles, whoever that is. For me, it was my grandparents, and they were not very young, and so I would kind of just I'd go out and I'd play and do these things. But when I had like my time to be with my mom, she was dead from the whole week. So the only place she would take me was to the movies. It's very cheap out. It's easy. She gets to rest while she's in the theater. I get to just like lose my mind watching these crazy movies. And so that was like the beginning of like my fascination with like cinema. And I didn't really chase it until I was in my teens, and then I went and lived a little life. I served a mission. Basically, like I lived and did like this like a religious mission for 2 years in Italy, and then I came back and I went to school. And I basically thought that there was no way to access that kind of dream to be a filmmaker. So I followed like more literary approaches. I thought I'd be like maybe a novelist or that I'd write poetry, and I did. I wrote poetry, but being a novelist is hard, man. So I got married and had kids, and then I eventually found my way back to filmmaking. Um,
Mm.
but just kind of little by little, just with enough time, I was like, why did I give up on that thing that I love so much? And so then I got into AFI, which is here in Los Angeles, California, and I moved to LA and went to AFI and have been pursuing the filmmaking dream ever since. That's
Wow,
my
that's
back.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's a cool story.
that's like a life story. It
uh,
wasn't short either.
no, and the part about going to Italy, how did that happen?
Oh man, I had like, I had like I was a very religious teenager, and so I mean Latino families, right? Like we tend to have like these, we hold on to these like ideas that feel otherworldly because we often feel very much in the position of the underdog. I don't want to like umbrella statement anything, but like that's been my experience. The underrepresented communities often feel like in a certain position. um I've been very lucky, even being underrepresented. Like I've had all these wonderful opportunities, and one of those things was to be able to take my beliefs and go to another country and serve in that country. And that was wild. It was a beautiful experience. I would say that a lot of what I experienced on that religious mission, and understanding like my own heritage as a Latino and as a Dominican, they really kind of they fall into making When Big People Lie.
Wow. How did how did you learn filmmaking? Did you study filmmaking?
Um, Man, it's like not to be like poetic about film here, but like so much of cinema, I feel is it's a feeling, it's this intrinsic thing. So like I wasn't properly trained when I made a lot of my first short films. And But then when I went to AFI, I was properly trained. You sometimes the instinct is enough, you know. I remember learning like when I went to AFI, I almost was like, I feel like I know all of this stuff that I'm learning here, you know, in like film school. But inevitably you learn like things that you don't realize you're learning. And then when I came to making When Big People Lie, I felt like a much stronger filmmaker. I felt like I had far less question marks in the process of filmmaking because I was a little more polished. But before that, I was a rough stone rolling, man. I was just kind of I'd have ideas and it's like, all right, let's spitballing and let's throw it up. Put a camera on sticks and let's shoot it.
Yeah. So do you feel like your films have improved a lot since then, or
Since going
your
to film school,
filmmaking? Yeah.
tenfold. Yeah, it was.
Really?
Yeah, I would say yes. It's like I don't recommend it for everybody. I don't think everybody needs film school. I don't think I even needed film school. Uh, it's that's the heartbreak I think of going to film school. Is you think that when you go to film school you're gonna be like on a rocket ship and you're going to immediately go toward like studio filmmaking. And the reality is that all filmmaking, before you're an established filmmaker, is indie filmmaking. And so
Mm.
yeah, I really don't think you need film school, but I cannot say that I went to film school and learned nothing. Like I went to film school and I became 10 times the filmmaker that I am today.
Wow.
Well, made me the filmmaker that I am today.
Yeah. Um, all right. Well, can you tell me a little bit more about like the process of shooting this film specifically, or actually, yeah, yeah, and also like any challenges that you faced shooting it?
A million, so many
Yeah, a lot.
challenges,
Yeah,
nonstop
unexpected.
challenges.
Yeah.
But we had I mean what I can say is like making the film, having the right people around to support the vision was like more than enough. I mean, like from locations, dropping and trying to find something. I mean, the film is set in Boston, Massachusetts, but we shot it in Los Angeles. So trying to like find a place that would be representative of something that's like in the East Coast on the West Coast is, you have your work cut out for you. But again, when you have great producers and you have a really strong cinematographer, figuring out the visual language was like a process that took weeks to figure out. Not because you have like you know a less competent team, but because myself as a filmmaker, I'm trying to figure out how do I want this idea to look, and when you have a good DP, that person is kind of pushing you to get those answers out. Like what does this look like in a best case? And we had to watch a lot of films. I remember watching Lucas Dant's L'Infini, uh, beautiful film, and I thought that was like one of my first references, to visualize When Big People Lie, to be like, this is kind of what it looks like in our minds.
That's awesome. Okay. And yeah, I mean, that sounds challenging. Yeah, you want it to have this East Coast feel, and then you're living in the West Coast. That's an interesting challenge I didn't consider. But the other thing I'm curious about is what inspired you to make this specific film and this write this story and yeah.
I would call this film like, to some extent, some, you know, biographical, not in that like everything that happens in the movie is exactly what happened to me, but there are a lot of when I was growing up, um, and I'll use these two things as kind of like the foundation for making the film. When I grew up in Boston, I saw kind of this bustling immigrant community that was like they were all together. They were somehow trying to piecemeal their lives together and go, how do we get ahead? So many of them were thinking about futures that were far beyond what I could think of at like the tender age of 8 or 9 or 10. And what they would do a lot of times, especially when they were undocumented, they would get into these green card marriages. And I saw so many of them. I saw 4 or 5 of them. I saw when they were arranged. I saw, when they would take place. And and I noticed that it was like a way of survival. It was a way for the undocumented to come in and become documented, and a way for the other party to make a little money, 5, 10, 15,000 over 6 months to a year to 2 years to 3 years. But what happens when you all of a sudden have a family unit that's created off of this imaginary circumstance of like family of marriage. The marriage is real, but the family is not, and yet somehow they have to learn together to work like they are a real family. And I think that that's a really interesting premise. But for a kid, and this is the other part of that, right? This is the second piece that was a foundation to the story. As a kid, you're really asking yourself like, what is going on? And a lot of times in immigrant families, there's this like hesitancy to explain what's going on because they want to keep the child's innocence intact, but doing that causes a lot more harm than it does good, because children, they understand a lot more than we give them credit for. And I remember feeling that way at 8 and seeing all these kind of families doing this, and the kids that were in those families, and having that question in my mind of like, I think something's going on here, but nobody wants to tell me what it is. Um, so I think those are the two pillars that were foundational and like holding up the story for When Big People Lie, which I think it's more of an emotive thing, right? Because structurally as a story, like and narratively, it almost comes across as like episodic. So there's not like, it's not major plot. It's more of like this emotional idea. What happens when you have a family that's not a family, and what happens when you lie to a child about this, um, and seeing how that plays out over time.
Yeah, and I feel like you did the thing we hear about in film, like showing and not telling. A lot of it is just kind of like the feeling and what the boy is seeing and experiencing. It's not like the film is telling you everything. It's showing you a lot of it. And back to like what I was saying, which I think to me is one of the standout aspects of this film, is the visual like style of these kind of flashing images that evoke the feeling of like a memories and thoughts, and I don't know. Oh, is that like something you specifically had in your mind? Like, I want this to feel like you're inside this boy's head. Is that something you thought like specifically, or is that just it just kind of came out that way?
No, I would say, I mean, I had a tremendous editor, but a lot of credit goes to her for figuring out like an interesting way of using the footage that we had accumulated, over the course of the prep and of the shoot. But I think that we had established water as a motif, and really water, like on a narrative level, was the tissue that connected us to this idea of memory, which was always a major part of the film. This idea of like, I have a father, My biological father is this distant memory. I don't really remember like exactly quite what the relationship was, but I remember we would go to the ocean. I remember we would like be at the beach, and then having this surrogate who's this man who's not his father, who's not even, anything relative to his ethnicity, or race, and or culture, right? And so now you have this very cross ethnic story where a man is taking this position of father for a boy, without being his father, without really being, even that pillar in the family. Um, anyway, those things kind of collide. That the idea of like the present father who's not his father, and the absent father, who he's trying to remember, and that makes this lapsing memory. Alongside these waves, and this idea of drowning in those waves. This idea of like, life is so difficult and makes things very hard. And for Lola, that's her relationship to the water.
Oh yeah, that's a cool like metaphor there. And something else that I think is like some of the best films I've seen can be about something that you have not experienced in your life. It could be a completely different life experience. It could be, people from a different background, but you still connect on it on a human level. And so like for this film, like I've never been through that situation, but I feel like I can still connect with it and it still resonates with me on different levels. And like even something like I said, what it feels like to have certain memories and stuff, like what you're talking about, like how thinking back to your like the biological father, it was kind of like fragments in your mind, like you don't have a full clear memory of that. Like I can relate to that in other aspects of life where I just remember a moment kind of vaguely from my childhood, and that's how it feels like in your mind. It's not a clear picture. It's like these flashes and these, like I said, fragments of stuff. So I think that people that have no connection to this, this like exact story or plot, they can still connect with it on different levels, and that's what I think is really impressive about the film and about a lot of films that I like. So, can you tell me about like what you want people to take away from this film? What do you want people who are watching it to feel or think or come away with?
I always like to say the film, once it's out there in the world, it doesn't belong to me, and belongs to the people who watch it. And some people will have differing degrees of like familiarity with it, right? Some people will go, "Oh man, like I know that feeling. Like I know this kid. I'm that kid." Some people will
Mm,
feel like Lola. Some people will feel like Muhammad. Some people will go like, "I don't really get this. I don't really understand what's going on here." um, all that's okay with me. I think that like going to watch the film and just experiencing it wash over you, whatever that feeling is. If it makes you want to talk to your mom, if it makes you want to talk to your dad, if it makes you remember your childhood, great. That's that's what movies are meant to do. To
yeah,
touch something inside of you and make you feel connected to the rest of everything else, whether you like it or not.
yeah. It's kind of like the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I know it.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and I watched it with my family, with my parents, and like we're not Asian, but we connect. Like we connected on with it on different levels. And my mom's like, I relate with this mom and her relationship with her daughter. Like so that's what I mean. Where this film, I feel like, even though I don't have like a direct, I mean, I am, I do have a Latino mother, but other aspects I don't relate with specifically, but I still connect with it on an emotional level for other reasons, and I really like that. So, I mean, this is also another interesting question I have is about as an artist in general, like how you balance what you want versus what the audience will enjoy, or some artists I think. maybe they focus too much on one or the other, and some maybe try to balance it, or I don't know. Like some artists, they say, I'm just going to make this for me, and then if people like it, that's fine. If not, whatever. Other artists might say, like, I want the audience to have this specific journey, this specific experience. How do you balance kind of those two sides of it?
You know, I think I what resonates with me is like I make this for me, and you know the audience kind of comes later in the process. It does come in the process. It's not like it never shows up, but it shows up rather late in the process. Typically in the editing room, you know, I'm making the film at the beginning, and like all of that's for me. And
Mm,
I'm maybe at the very end of the script, you know, on the script level, I go, all right, what's kind of unclear here, and then you make the movie and it's a different kind of movie than the script, and then you go into the editing room and that's a little bit of a different movie than what you shot on, you know, on the day. In the editing room the question becomes what is unclear, and I think there's a balancing act there of like how much needs to be, you know, clear for your audience to understand, and how much, you know, can you, I don't want to say sacrifice, but like leave to them to just say like, I think I trust you enough to understand what's going on here without me having to explain it.
yeah.
Sometimes that's to the detriment of the film. Sometimes that's to the benefit of the film. And you know, I see both in When Big People Lie, and uh, yeah. So anyway, that's my answer. The balancing act happens, I think, in the editing room where I'm going, is this clear enough for the audience? And a director has to. They live and die by that. You know, they go, all right. I thought that was clear enough for me, and I trusted my audience to that degree. Um, I feel really happy with where we landed with When Big People Lie.
Yeah. To me, it felt like a perfect balance, you know, where, like I said, it's like show, not tell type thing, but it feels clear at the same time. You know what I mean? It's not confusing at any point, but it's not like being spoon fed to you either. So I think you hit that balance like perfectly. And so, yeah, and I think that's a cool approach that you have, and actually like good advice for people. I mean, everyone has a different approach to it, but I think that can be a good approach for a lot of people to, you know, write it for yourself at first, and then maybe towards the end you could kind of polish it a little bit if something is not clear. But I think the initial part, it makes sense to write it not thinking about the audience too much in the beginning, because that, I think that can maybe hurt you if you do it too much. Um, but anyway, the other thing I like to ask is like, what do you think you learned from this specific project that you're going to take with you into future projects? What lessons did you learn?
Uh, to just to I think to trust the I mean, this is, I hate to say things that are really, that are trite, you know, but like I really felt that with When Big People Lie, more than probably any of my projects, I learned to trust the process. You know, there were a lot of bumps in making the film, and it was really difficult to you know, um, figure all that out. And but we eventually did. So
Yeah, like trust people around you, right, as well, and
yeah,
that's
cast
yeah,
the right group. You know what I'm saying? Like have the right team, have the right actors. You know, focus on that, and the rest will kind of happen. Whether it's like, you know, it happens in catastrophe or it happens in like bliss. I feel like I felt like I had both. I had a little catastrophe. I had a little bit of bliss. But if you
yeah,
trust the process enough, you'll see the mark at the end.
awesome. And I'm just also curious about like the for you the you're right like the writing process as well. So I think we talked, you know, a little bit about your the directing, but what about the process for you on writing this? Because it's very well written, and like your decision maybe to again do more showing than telling. Is that something that you thought about too? Like you don't want it to be too dialogue heavy. Um, So what was that writing process like?
Yeah, I worked. Well, I work with a lot of writers, but in this particular case, I work with this Mexican writer. His name's Pablo Cervera,
Oh
and
yeah.
we wrote this film together. He's an incredible writer. I mean, he is. I would call him the brain, right? And I would call myself the heart. And as a brain, he's thinking in terms of structure. At the very beginning of the process, I remember he and we would have, making a film and breaking a story it's a really long process. I think so much longer than like we'd like to give credit. Sometimes people just like we have that shortcut of like I've been envisioning the story for so long, and I can't say that was like fully my experience. I had been envisioning the story for a long time. I went into AFI knowing that I wanted to make this movie. I had not had the film written, so when Pablo and I started meeting, we would come up with all these like structures that would basically walk through certain archetypes and understand what those archetypes might be. And we would halt at where things felt unclear. We would halt if something felt like the continuity would disrupt. And there was a certain point I remember that where we kind of met, and it was a really important conversation. It was one of trust between the both of us, where I said like at some point I don't think I care about the continuity. Like on the writing level, we knew we were going to make this thing kind of episodic, and see almost like these little snapshots, and that they would play against the water motif, and and that was on the writing level. So at a certain point, we had that figured out, just writing it before we ever went to shoot, and we had to surrender to that because it goes almost against structure. It goes against some normal archetypes that you use in screenwriting. And the thing that we were fighting for once we got there was the right dialogue, the right emotion, and being able to kind of pit us in the perspective of young Elvis. And the way we do that with like his little voiceovers, which sometimes you can't even understand what the kid is saying, but like it was the texture of it was the tone that we wanted to evoke. So it didn't matter. It's like if it makes you feel like you understand what he's feeling, then that's where we want to go.
Yeah. That and I I think that was effective as well. And when you say that it's like episodic, it makes me think that this could actually I could see a version of this as like a series too. Is that? But it feels kind of so perfect as a short film at the same time that I don't know if I would want to mess with it. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like doing a feature version of this or doing more episodic like a series, or do you prefer to keep it as just keep it as a short film?
Yeah, I've never thought about adapting it into like a TV series, like something episodic that way. But there is a feature. The features, it's I would say I'm about like a third of the way through, and I mean, hopefully, we'll be seeing that in theaters in the next couple of years.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, awesome. Well, all right, John Franco, it was great talking to you about this film. As I said, I loved it. It's really a standout out of all the films we received, and so yeah, I want to spread the word about it and get a lot of people to watch it because it's amazing. So
thank
thanks
you,
for talking with me today,
thank you,
and
man.
yeah, yeah,
Appreciate
all
it.
right, no problem. Have
Uh,
a good one. We'll
Next
see
time
you.
I see you, more beard, more hair. I got a bun. That's gonna be like our next thing. We got a bun.
I don't know if I can pull that off, but I'll try to figure it.
It's coming, man. It's coming. All right, pal.
All right, man.
Take
I'll
it
see
easy.
ya. Bye.
Bye.